All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful and honestly one of the most important stories in all of human history, the Exodus. It's a narrative so many of us think we know, a story that has literally shaped civilizations. But as you'll see, it also comes with some really fascinating and challenging questions. And you know that is not an exaggeration, not at all. This single story sits right at the very heart of Judaism. And it's also incredibly important to Christianity and Islam. Its impact on culture, on politics, on art around the globe, it's just immense. And that, right there, is the central question we're going to explore today. We're going to look at this epic through two totally different lenses. First, as the foundational story it's always been, and then we'll look at it through the eyes of historians who are asking a completely different set of questions. So first, let's just get grounded in the story itself, the powerful tradition that's been told and retold for thousands of years, shaping the very identity of millions. The biblical narrative is just pure, gripping drama. I mean, it kicks off with the Hebrew people enslaved in Egypt under crushing labor. Then, a leader, Moses, rises up to confront the most powerful man in the world, the Pharaoh. This whole confrontation leads to this incredible, miraculous escape across the sea, which is then followed by this really tough, transformative journey through the wilderness. And it all culminates in the creation of a brand new community, bound together by a divine covenant at Sinai. It's this perfect arc, really, from oppression to becoming a people. Right at the center of it all, you've got Moses. Now, here's what's so interesting about him. He is not some perfect, flawless superhero, not even close. He doubts himself, he actually argues with God, he gets angry and frustrated with his own people. It's that complexity, that very human struggle, that makes him such a powerful and relatable figure, even today. And of course, every great hero needs a great villain, right? And Pharaoh is more than just a political enemy. He becomes this powerful symbol of absolute oppressive earthly power. So the conflict between Moses and Pharaoh isn't just political. It's framed as this huge theological showdown, a clash between the will of a human king and the will of God. And that's what gives the story so much of its moral weight. And all of that is why this is so much more than just an escape story. The Exodus is what we call a foundational story because it digs into these massive, universal themes: liberation, justice, what faith really means, and how a shared memory, a shared story, creates a collective identity. When you get right down to it, it's about how a group of slaves became a nation. Okay, so now we're going to pivot. Let's switch gears and put on a totally different hat, the historian's hat. And this means we start asking some very different kinds of questions. This is the question that drives all historical detective work. Scholars are looking for external evidence, right? They're digging for archaeological finds, searching for mentions in other ancient records. And when they turn that lens on the Exodus story, well, a much more complicated picture starts to emerge. This slide really gets to the core of the puzzle for historians. On the one hand, the biblical account describes this huge, nation-defining event, a massive population on the move. But on the other hand, the ancient Egyptians, who were meticulous record keepers, just don't mention it. And archaeologists haven't found direct slam-dunk evidence of a huge group of people wandering the Sinai Desert for 40 years. Now, this doesn't mean historians just throw the whole story out. Not at all. Instead, they come up with other really interesting possibilities. Maybe the Exodus narrative is like a tapestry, weaving together the memories of smaller, separate escapes into one grand epic story. Maybe it contains what they call a historical core, but the size and scale were different. The debate isn't really about true or false. It's about how history and memory and storytelling all get tangled up together. And this brings us to a really crucial point. There can be different ways of looking for truth, and they don't necessarily have to cancel each other out. You see, what this really boils down to are two very different quests for truth. The religious tradition is asking about meaning. What does the story teach us about who we are, about freedom, about justice, about a relationship with the divine? The historian, though, is asking about verification. What can we actually prove happened using hard, external evidence? And this quote just hits the nail on the head. A story's power to shape an entire culture, to inspire hope, to build an identity for millions. That power doesn't just depend on whether an archaeologist can verify every single detail. Its truth can also live in its meaning. Because let me tell you, the impact of the Exodus goes far, far beyond ancient history. Its afterlife, as this incredible symbol of hope, is maybe one of its most powerful legacies. It's amazing when you think about it. This one story became a universal language of hope. For centuries, oppressed people all over the world, from African American slaves singing spirituals about crossing the Jordan to modern-day political activists, they've all seen their own struggles reflected in the story of the Exodus. It has become this timeless blueprint for confronting tyranny and fighting for freedom. So, in the end, we see the Exodus isn't just one thing. It's really two things at once. It is a sacred story that defines a people's identity and their relationship with God, and at the very same time, it is a fascinating historical puzzle that scholars are still trying to piece together. Its real power, its enduring power, lies in its ability to be both. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. The Exodus shows us how a single story can define a past and literally shape a future. So what are the stories, the ancient ones or the modern ones, that are doing that for us right now? What are the stories that are shaping our own understanding of who we are and what we believe in?